Aloha, everyone. I'm your host, Christina Laney Mitri, and welcome to Smart Living Hawaii's podcast, where we discuss smart homes and technology, sustainability, healthy lifestyles, and smart business. Today, we'll have a Sustainable Leaders Series talk story with Vincent Tai, and he's an architect, a builder, developer, and visionary. We will learn more about his home he has built here in Hawaii, which is 2184 Round Top Drive in Makiki Heights, and how his ideal home has features we all should consider when we move to a more greener Hawaii. So, aloha, Vincent.
Hello.
Thank you so much for talking story with us today. I actually met him because I was showing his home, which is on the market today currently, and I was showing his home to a client of ours who is also an architect builder, who was very fascinated by the work that they saw online, and they wanted to see it in person. And when we had the opportunity to view his home, he did such a great job with a tour for us that I thought it was worthy to share with all of our listeners, because the type of home he built are things that I think today, with the greening your home, the things that you could do to your home would be beneficial here. So I did want to do a quick bio run on him, and I'm going to read this off so you can all learn a little bit more about Vincent before we jump in. So he has worked for architectural firms in California and Hong Kong after graduating from UC Berkeley, and this was a little bit ago. He has been registered architect since 1971. He formed Tai Associates Architects and was the sole principal of his private practice with staff of 25 in San Francisco since 1975. He semi-retired in 2000, and the firm provided architectural services for many private and public clients. He was a recipient of numerous national and local design awards. His architectural projects include University of California at Berkeley's student housing. He's also done the San Francisco City College Library, the U.S. Post Office, I'm assuming in San Francisco as well, Federal Express Cargo building at SF Airport, joint venture architect for public parking structures in SF International Airport, interiors of the Marriott Marquis, which is about 1,500 rooms in San Francisco, and the Bank of America branches, and many more to list on. But apart from being an architect, since 1976, Mr. Tai also acted in the capacity of a real estate broker and developer with extensive background in acquisition, financial packaging, and development. So because he knows so much in all of these different areas, he's able to assist his clients with much more. And so yeah, we welcome him. Thank you so much, Vincent, for being here.
Okay, thank you.
So we always start with your background. So I know we gave a little spiel on you, but perhaps you can talk about where did you grow up when you were?
Okay, yeah. I grew up and spent my first 17 years in Hong Kong. So as a late teenager, I went to California and went to Berkeley. In the 60s, it's the tumultuous days in Berkeley, right? Seems like everything started there, all the different movements. Okay? Those are exciting years. And so after I graduated in 1967, and I worked in San Francisco Bay Area for a few years and got my license. And then I decided that I really wanted to teach, but not in architecture. At that time, I really wanted to teach industrial design. I really admire architects who turn industrial designers, like Charles Eames, okay? George Nelson, right? These people who starting with a big building and turn into a small item that you have to pay very little, pay a lot of attention to details. Okay, because in a building you can be off by 1 inch, nobody knows. Right? But when you try to put a lamp together or a chair together, you cannot be 1 inch will be way off. Right? Actually, I worked for George Nelson when I was in New York. Yeah, actually, I spent well. After I got my license in 1971, I moved to New York, and I went to Pratt for the Master in Industrial Design degree. Of course, when you're doing your master's degree, you don't go to school full time. So actually, I work full time on either on my own or big companies like George Nelson. Okay, I actually work with him on a couple of interior jobs. And also William Snee, I know we heard of him. Those are the industrial design back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. They designed logos like Exxon, maybe IBM, I forgot it, and the cars, things like that. But this is back in the 60s, early 70s. Okay, so it sounds like a long time ago. So I worked in New York for about 2 years. And then after I got my degree, okay, so I'm clear. So how do I get a teaching job, right? So I just happened to look up in the New York Times advertising employment, okay? And then I found in Hong Kong, at that time it's called Technical College, now university, okay? They were hiring for lecturer in industrial design. Just happened like that, okay? So I said, wow, that's my hometown. And then that's what I wanted to teach. And I want to, it's a good opportunity, right? So I had got on the interview in New York, and I was hired, and I was told by mistake, their mistake and my mistake as well, that I will be provided with the whole package, like housing and food, transportation, everything. That's what they do with expats, okay? Very generous. But as a local, you get maybe 10% of what the expat gets. So I traveled back to Hong Kong and thinking that I'm going to pick up a new post. Then, to my surprise, I was told that I would not be qualified as an expat because I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and also at that time, I don't have my citizenship yet. I could have, but I didn't get it at that point. Okay, so I of course I have my green card, right? But they said, well, because you only have a green card, you're still considered a resident. Therefore, we can only pay you local salary.
Oh.
Which is like 1/10 of what which is very low. Okay, teaching job anywhere low. Okay, and I figured that because even with a salary without benefits, you can hardly survive in Hong Kong because the housing is very expensive. So I said, oh, well, too bad, So I started knocking on doors to get a job, going back to my old profession.
Oh.
And I was lucky. I ended up working in one of the best and largest firm, okay? And in fact, they've done a number of buildings that you would know if I mentioned that. So in fact, I was quite well regarded there. Now, that year and a half, or almost 2 years in Hong Kong, really changed my perspective, my view towards to be an architect or how to make money. Realistically, you have to make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not just artists, okay? But that 2 years, I got exposed to how people do work in a completely different environment. So different. Nowadays, almost every young man met, I don't care what profession they're in. Like professional, like legal, banking, architects, engineer, I always tell them, now, this is, and I started telling these people about 30 years ago, I will continue the same, that you go west and you end up in the east, okay? So you go west from California, I'm talking about, okay? And then you are in the east, which is, we always call Asia the east, right? Because the, not just the education system, but mainly the working system is very different. Because they have fewer professionals and they have lots of work, okay, in all professions, not just architecture. So a young graduate within 1 or 2 years experience would put into a job that is equivalent to maybe 10 or 15 years experience here. Now, the same with legal, the same with accounting, I know for sure, particularly for engineering and architecture. So that means a recent graduate in architecture, they 1 year, 2 year experience, they will be put in charge of 1 or 2 or 3 high-rise buildings. When I say high-rise, I don't mean 6-story buildings. I'm talking about 20, 30-story buildings, okay? And how do architects or recent, or not just recent architects, any architects in the state or Canada or in the UK get that opportunity? They don't. I know because I worked here for 3 years and then I worked in New York. Most opportunities are building 1-story and 2-story buildings. You're lucky you get a 4-story building. And we learn a lot about politics here and how it delays the approval of a project, right? So it could easily take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years just to get even a single-family home approved because of opposition to all kind of stuff, okay? But they're meaningful, don't get me wrong, okay? But that is the system here. Now, but in places like Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Taiwan, those places I know better, okay? I don't know about
How fast does a building get built over there?
Well, see, apart from the construction progress is much faster because there are more people, okay? Yeah. But more importantly is the approval process.
Yeah.
So even with a 20-story building in a difficult site, the client walked into an architect's office, said, please design a building for me. 6 months later, they start construction, okay? And I'm not exaggerating, okay? Here, you're lucky you start work in 5 years, right? Now, in fact, in San Francisco is probably one of the more difficult cities. If you think Honolulu is bad, San Francisco is much worse because people are more educated, I'll put it that way. The opponents I'm talking about. And they have high-priced attorneys, planning attorneys, specialized in, right? So things get dragged on and on for a long time. In fact, on SF Marriott, we call FOMA nowadays, okay? It started about the time that I came back from San Francisco, from Hong Kong, mid-1970s, okay? It's just started. At that time, it's still just all warehouses and nothing. Today is all the high-tech people there now, okay? They're making $1 billion every day. That project, because SF Marriott development, is have taken almost 3 generations to get started. So any delay in an environment like that, we're not talking about weeks, we're not talking about years. We're talking about in terms of generations, okay? So that's how difficult it is, you know? And you'll be surprised, even in Hawaii, you probably have seen projects that took 10 years, 15 years, right? I mean, a young kid will be 15 years old.
Well, I know Coa Ridge is what, 20, 25 years already?
Yeah. So imagine if you're an architect, you're relying on that job, you know, 20 years later, you know, you have to pass it on to your son or even grandson, right? You know.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm so much for that. Okay, but what I'm saying is that 2 years, it completely changed my
Perspective, huh?
completely. Okay, now not just that, it's how people do business. Okay, and then I recognize, you know, in Hong Kong, all the rich people there, if they're 10 or 20, they're all in real estate. Real estate is the only game, even now. Okay, they have no industry, they have no, perhaps they go financing. Okay, but mainly the local there is real estate. So that's where I learned. Then I realized that if I want to be an architect, I better learn about that too. Okay. Now the reason is I came back from San Francisco. I came back from Hong Kong, moved back to San Francisco in 1975. In May 1975, people of my age would know at that time it was the tail end of a long recession. Okay. Now, architectural firms get hurt the most when you have a recession. People don't have the money to build. Even they tell you something, it takes so long to get a project going, right? So I was looking for work. It was in May, June 1975. Almost all the offices I went to, it's just totally empty. I can see like 30 tables. Before they have computers, okay? They have a lot of big tables, okay? Drafting, right? That's how I learned draw my hand, okay? And I forgot to tell you that during my final years in Berkeley, and also throughout the next few years, I'm I would say, half professional illustrator. I wouldn't call myself fully professional, okay? So I've been kind of semi-surviving based on doing architectural illustrations, okay? For home builders, interiors, and a couple of big buildings too, okay? So I've been doing that. So I figured that, well, if if job is nowhere to be found, I might as well start on my own. So I can draw, okay? So I printed out my brochures and sent out all the architects and home builders. And then I started thinking, now, what I learned from Hong Kong is I have to think about real estate development. Now, keep in mind now, when I came back, I have no relatives in the Bay Area, in California. All my friends are my age from college, okay? And they are all be working for a company, right? None of them are rich, okay? Now, in order for architects to get any work, there are basically two requirements among many. One, you've got to know rich people. Only rich people have money to build, okay? Number two, you need to know powerful people who are in a position to select and approve architects. In many big companies like Bank of America, Marriott, you name it, when there's one person there who's not the boss of Marriott, but he's the guy who's going to select architects, right? So that's a very powerful person, right? And so that's what I meant. You need to know rich and the powerful. So now, being at that time now, Asian, even in California, being a very blue city, a very liberal city, that hasn't really changed, okay? And besides, I have no connection. So how do I get work, right? No way, because I don't know any rich people. I don't know any powerful people, right? So the only way, apart from getting lucky, get a small job to, my first job is remodeling a bathroom, basically, a bathroom in the Hyatt Hotel, okay? Well, actually, it's a what you call it? The people go there to get their face done.
Like a powder room? No, salon.
Yeah,
or
yeah, like I said, exactly, a salon. Okay, but they have a steam room right? They need to be remodeled. So for some reason, I got that job, then my first job. Okay. So I decided that the only way that I really can get myself started to do architecture work is to get people to help me or invest in a development, project development that needs an architect. Not every development needs an architect, right? So that's how I started. Okay.
Yeah. So you basically took your love for architecture and started adding elements to your business to where you also had, that's why you had the real estate side, you had the development side, and you have the architecture all
yes.
inclusive with your company.
Yes, in
And
fact,
that made a difference, right? So they would buy the whole package,
at
right?
that time, it's a survival. It's a survival way to survive. Otherwise, so now because of my 2 years stint in Hong Kong, I get to know some rich people there. So that's why it helped me. So I started with nothing, but all these rich people believe in me. And also at that time, it's called timing. Now, if I have moved back from Hong Kong, if I moved to Oklahoma City or New Orleans, okay, it wouldn't be the same, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of opportunity, right? But in San Francisco, particularly in California, in the late 1970s and early 1980s, a lot of money are coming from Asia. Okay, but in fact, those monies stopped after the mid 1980s because they all lost money here. Okay, most of them, because they're making money in Hong Kong is so easy. They thought that it's the same everywhere else, but it's not. Now, like I said, in Hong Kong, they could start the building in 6 months. Here, they found out they put money in. 5 years later, they still do EIR and environmental impact report, right? So the money left basically after mid 1980.
Yeah.
I was lucky. So I was lucky just at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to dive into, so you basically had this company and you've been running it for all these years. And when you decided to semi-retire in 2000, you basically, what brought you to Hawaii to do that?
Okay, it is a long and short story, as I make it short, okay? Now, by the year 2000, I worked very hard in the 80s, particularly in the early 1990s. I have to, okay? Being all by myself. And in 1 year, I'm not kidding, I was sitting 7 different boards, okay? Including the AIA. I was on the AIA director. Yeah. So, I mean, you get burned out in a sense, okay?
Yeah.
So I decided that, well, by late 1990, 1998 and 1999, I decided I have enough. In those days, airfare is much cheaper too. So you can buy a round the world ticket using Star Alliance, okay? And I bought my tickets in Bangkok because it's cheaper. My cousin who runs a travel agency there, you can go around the world in business class for under $5,000.
Wow.
Or in first class under $6,000 in those days, right? Now, keep in mind, I was thinking, well, if I let go of one staff or 2 staff, 1 month is $5,000. And I use the money to travel around the world. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? Now, in fact, in those days, my staff was reduced to maybe under 10 at that time, near end of 1990s. So I decided that I just don't do that anymore. So starting in the year 2000, I don't have any outside client. I stopped working for outside. Even in development, I stopped having partners. I just do my own, smaller stuff. Okay. Now, so by the year 2000, I want to change in my life. Okay. And then just at that time, my sister, who's 5 years younger than me. She contracted this illness called scleroderma. Scleroderma, the skin and also the immune system. She needed to live in warm weather. So she is an artist. I was saying, most artists do not know where money comes from. Okay, so this sister of mine is one of the most talented artists I ever met. I think quite a few. Okay, in fact, just we're talking about Wayne Thiebaud is my favorite, and he passed away 2 days ago, year 101. Okay, it's Bay Area. You know him, Wayne Thiebaud?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, you're looking it up. Okay. Anyway.
I will.
Okay. So I decided to move her to Hawaii. After I invited all my family, siblings to a family reunion here about 20 years ago. And then we decided this is a good place for her. So that was the major reason I moved. But there are other minor reasons. Okay. And by my sister, in fact, in my house, half of the paintings, the artwork was by her. Okay?
Right. I remember that.
Yeah.
So his house has a lot of white space where it's almost like a blank canvas for artwork as well. So when you do tour his home, you will see a lot of pieces, and I think a lot of them are attributed to his sister. So now that we have found ourselves in Hawaii and everything, I know finding this property, I don't remember how you stumbled on it, but that's a unique thing as well. Because it's actually a nice property where you were able to subdivide into 2 parcels pretty much, right?
Correct. See, I was looking for a house or property for my sister. And I found one in Sierra Drive. And while I was looking, the broker was showing me around, okay? And then he showed me this property right here, which is basically nothing, okay, up in the hill, quite steep. And there was one, like a vacation home, old 2-story building. So I know nothing about Honolulu, absolutely nothing. But once I walk into that site, I can see some potential for me, okay? It's steep, okay? But like I said, one of my interviews, Honolulu magazine, I said, since I came from San Francisco, they look pretty flat to me, okay?
So yeah, the property, the way it sits is kind of like cascading down. You can see everything out, and you can see the view of the city line and the ocean and the treetops. And it's in Makiki Heights, but from the road, you can't actually see the property itself in the house, but you can see down yourself.
This is another
privacy part of the house, which is nice.
And the benefit that I see, in this house is very secluded in a way.
Secluded for sure.
Yeah, and then very private. Okay, and also I really like the backdrops because right adjacent to the Honolulu watershed, it's all green. Okay, I just call it rainforest. So the property is right against it. Okay, and I just love the greenery. In a way, I have lived in buildings that you see high rises, you see everywhere, right?
Well, I mean, your 3 places are Hong Kong, San Francisco, and New York. So it's a concrete jungle everywhere you go, and now you're living in a real jungle.
And also in China, right? In fact, I own 2 properties in China, one in Beijing, one in Shanghai, both in the middle of the city, right? And they were just building, So this is really intrigued me to see something like that, and so I decided to buy it and try it out. So I built my first house in a pretty steep slope with nothing, all just vegetation there. So I clear everything out, and that's my first house. And then right next to it, there was a two-story building, old, I think it was used as like a vacation home or guest house. So I renovated that when I'm living there. So when I built the first house. So we lived in the first house since, I think it finished in 2006. And then 6 or 7 years later, there was a fire that damaged the rental house at that time, okay? The house, we moved from the new house, right? So the existing house that I renovated, it was substantial damage. So I told my wife, well, maybe this give me a chance to build another house, a bigger house, and most importantly, I want an indoor pool.
Yes, so his other house that he started with when he built this property is actually also on the market as well, but it's a smaller home, and his first one with a pool outside.
Exactly.
And he was
Well,
very
it's a small, exactly, smaller home is relative. It's still a 4,000 square foot home. Okay.
So his pool, he loves to swim a lot, so it's more of like a lap pool type of pool. And the one that was outside is a lot of trees and leaves would fall into the pool. So that's why he wanted the pool to be indoors. The second time.
It's a 20-meter pool. It's only 11 foot wide in the first house. Okay, and there are no big trees right above it, but somehow leaves comes everywhere. Okay? Every morning, I mean, it just, it's a lot of work. So I told my wife, my next pool would not be outside pool. Okay, and also I'm not still quite used to the hot weather. Like the sun and the humidity really gets to me. So in an outdoor pool, you can only swim on a certain time of day. Right? In an indoor pool, anytime you can jump in there. So I said my next house will also have a 20-meter pool, but it needs to be indoor. Okay. Now, the fact that it's still a very steep site. Okay. So after we demolished the existing building, which is about to crumble anyway. So in order to put a 20-meter pool, even 9 feet wide, okay, it takes up a lot of space, right? Particularly on a very steep slope. So it's actually quite challenging to really develop a scheme to accommodate the main theme for me, not for everybody else, is the 20-meter pool. So because of the slope and because my requirement of the pool, it generated the floor plans. Okay, so all the functions are basically using the as the focus. Now,
yeah, so the pool is the focal point of the home, and the interesting thing about the pool, when you go into a house normally that has an indoor pool, you just have this feeling of like, it's like a kind of like chlorinated, weird feeling of, enclosed of a pool area. This house, I can let you know now because I was in it, you didn't feel like that at all. It was almost like a water feature, I would say, integrated into the home. And it's a very unique, we'll definitely have some pictures so you can see, but it's a very unique style. And the tiling, what was the point, the influence that you had for the tiling of the pool?
PM Montreal. Now, I'm not into starfish or dolphins. Okay, and I decided that pool, I need lines because when I swim and my strokes are not even. So if I swim in open water, I'll be circling all the time. Okay, so I need lines. Okay, so instead of one line, I decided maybe I have more lines. Then I think of Mondrian. Now, I've never seen a Mondrian pool. I've never seen one yet, okay? Now, so I decided maybe that's the way I want to do it. And also when you look at from the top floor, and then it's only 2 stories, okay? The second floor, you look down, it becomes a horizontal canvas. It's like a painting, okay?
Yeah.
Where can you have a horizontal canvas, right? Carpets, you can, people do that, all right? But here you can actually see it from way above, right? So I thought, well, maybe I'll do that. Now, but it's not easy because, I have to plan it using my CAD system every morning before the tile people come. I told them you cannot place one tile wrong because Mondrian would not like that.
Yeah, so that pool was definitely the focal point of the home. But I did want to dive into some of the other features that this house has that stand out a little bit more for the uniqueness of your home, but also for the green features. So what was another neat thing, and one thing that you don't really think about, but the pool itself, when you first walk in, it's right there and it goes all the way across the whole front way. And then you've got this staircase that goes up, and the staircase is this glass floating staircase that you walk on to get up to the second floor. So this home is definitely designed to Mr. Tai's, personal preference. So, how you look in the layout of the house, you definitely have to see it through his eyes. So what was your thoughts on the glass stairway and how it leads up, and how everything, I guess, like the living space and the kitchen and everything's upstairs? Yeah.
Yes, in fact, interior space, it needs to be appreciated. It needs to be experienced. In fact, most single-family homes have to do that, right? Because you have the living room, the bedroom, with the walls and everything, right? So this house gave me that little bit of opportunity to present it as an experience. So, like you said, when you walk in there, wow, you see, Montreal right there, right? And when you walk up the steps, you can see everything, right? Now, once you are upstairs, which is called, I'll call it the main public area. Okay? All the bedrooms are on the first level. There's only 2 levels. Okay. On the second level, when you go up there, when you walk all the way up there, and you see everything. There's no walls, right?
It's very open and very spacious, and it's very bright. So there's a lot of natural lighting that comes in from their skylights that they have, and throughout the house. And they also have a sky roof kind of setup, right? You said that was more of a commercial grade, almost like the lighting see-through.
Exactly. Something that I did in this house that I didn't do in my first house, because it was my first time ever designing a house in Honolulu. But now I realize that if I want light, you need skylights, but you need good skylights. Okay, I mean insulated skylights. And also I want so much skylight. There's one section of the house I have, they call it the sky roof, okay, and also insulated, right? So that really throws plenty of light that you can see, right? During the day, you don't need to turn on the lights.
Like if you're watching the Zoom recording that we have right now, he's sitting in on the second level, and that's a spiral staircase behind him that's going up.
To the roof.
Their lights are not on, right? So that's
no lights on.
There's no light on. And when we were there, it's like he has lights obviously for nighttime, but you wouldn't need them on during the day. It's a very bright house, and you feel that especially on the top level, which is the common space and the place where everybody comes and gathers and socializes, whether it's a kitchen or the grand area where they have a actual fireplace, a real fireplace. And this home itself is over 6,000 square feet interior. and it does have a 3-car garage. The land itself, I believe, is over 15,000, and it does have an elevator. So I know it's a kind of a steep slope, and some people may not be able to do stairs, but they've also incorporated an elevator into the home to make it more accessible for those who can't necessarily do stairs on a regular basis. And then it also has a rooftop viewing area, which is where that spiral staircase reaches, and you can see a beautiful skyline from up there, and I'm assuming amazing sunsets up there too. Let's see, I think those are the main specs of the home, and besides the natural lighting, this home actually doesn't have AC, and he hasn't really needed it, but the natural air itself with the cross ventilation, taking into account, you know, the lay of the land along with the natural elements makes it really key to not needing the AC. But you did mention per a purchase about installing AC, is that right?
No, I got an estimate proposal from Air Perfection in order to AC the whole house, split systems, and for like $27,000, which is not a lot of money for a house like that. So I just offer that if people need air conditioning or partial air conditioning, I'm willing to do that. It's just that we don't need it. Okay?
Yeah. So and the home, yeah, the home doesn't. I mean, the way if you build homes with the right design, I know that I've worked with homes and sold homes like Aussie Pop type of builds where it is taking the natural elements into the house and making sure that, you know, you do set up the home where air can flow, then you'll have less. And if you have natural light, then you don't need as much lighting during the day. And all of this helps reduce your energy costs that you wouldn't necessarily have to carry during the day, right? And to top it off, he does actually have 3 different solar systems in his home. Maybe you can explain the 3 different ones that you have, which are that you have set up in your home for different things.
Yes. If you look at the drone aerial photo, then you see, seems like the whole roof was covered with something.
Yes.
In addition to a roof deck up there. Okay. Now, basically, there are 3 different types of solar system. First is required by law, which is the hot water system is required for any new building. And then I installed the photovoltaic, about 38 panels. And then the third one, which covered a lot of area on the roof, is the black solar blankets for the pool. Now this is a upscale kind of blanket. They're cheaper ones, okay? This one you can actually walk on it, okay? I think it's called HelioCold, something like that. And it's a good system, okay? Now, when during most days, except for days that's been raining for days and weeks, the water temperature is pretty close to the ambient. That means there's no condensation. Now, for indoor pool, it works in my house, but it doesn't work in most homes, particularly homes that are not in the hot weather, okay? Where you have air conditioning or where you have heating, right? Because once you have that, the water temperature is not the same as the ambient temperature, and you get condensation everywhere, okay? But here, it's been 10 years, and we haven't seen even 1 drop of water. It's totally dry, right? Now, like I said, we're lucky, you know, because we don't have AC, and we have air movement, and we have the solar panel. So the water temperature is comfortable, okay? Now, so
Because I know we have in the condo that I'm at, the pool is not heated. So in the summertime, it is perfect and actually sometimes too warm. But in the wintertime, like right now, I mean, I would imagine other people from other places find it not cold at all. But for us, we're like, oh, it's freezing.
Okay, and
But,
another problem with indoor pool is the smell. People use chlorine or salt
like
water.
musty, yeah, or if it'll be musty if it don't, yeah, for sure.
Oh, actually, I've been to one house with an indoor pool, small pool even. You can smell the chlorine in the air. Okay, now, so I installed the ultraviolet light sanitary system, cleaning system. So there's no chemical. Now, even if you use salt produce chloride, okay, sodium chloride, right? So you still have chlorine, okay? But here is 100% tap water, okay? Further sanitized. And I used to tell my friend, you can swim, I mean, you can drink from it because it's tap water, right? Now, so that's another aspect that really helped the house. No condensation and no chemical smell throughout the house.
Yeah, and a lot of the homes that we are doing and focusing on now is more wellness and a healthier home. So that's actually, I don't know about the system that you have in place, but I'd definitely like to get more information on it because it is an alternative to the types of, chemicals that people do put in pools. And this would alleviate that if you're needing to have a more clean, less filter type of pool in that sense, right? Where it's got a lot of chemicals in it. So
actually,
that's
I'm surprised that very few home pools do not use ultraviolet. The community public pools, they use it. Okay? But the cost is the same as including using the chloride system. So cost is not a factor here. But the water is so good, and I'm not kidding you. I've never swam in a pool as good as this one. I mean, he's swimming in tap water, basically.
Yeah, and it's not cold like it is if you go, I guess, into the mountains and go swim in one of those
like
on a hike, right? Because those are free.
Relatively a big house, over 6,000 square feet. And at night, we have to turn lights on, right? And we have a pool pump that runs for 8 hours a day. And we charge the EV, we have EV, exclusively use it. Even with that, a monthly electrical bill is about $200.
Yeah, so they do have an EV charging station as well. And that does tick up your electricity as well. So, I mean, to know that 200 for a home this size is actually very reasonable. And they only have, I think, around 36, possibly 38 panels of PV. My house, well, with my parents living their house, they have 64 panels. Their carbon footprint is much is worse, I would say, because they use AC and they don't have as much of a ventilated home, and they are not in a nice tropical setting. They're in Pearl City, so it's a lot hotter. Therefore, they have to crank their AC. But they have probably almost double the panels in order to offset their electricity bill. So, finding certain locations of where you live and having that environment and that temperament also affects, how much electricity you use as well. This place that they are living to is a place that has that natural tropical element where you can grow food and have a food forest, and you can not have to worry about the sun beating down and killing your food garden that you grow on. So maybe you can jump into the types of food systems that you have at your home, or maybe started with, and then what you're doing now, because they have a lot of trees as well, food trees.
Yes. Now, even though the site is sloped, but I was able to create enough flat areas, or even in slope areas, you can still plant.
That's right.
Also because we are adjacent or contiguous to the state-owned land, and where nobody can come up here, there's no trail. So I expanded my tree growing effort into the state land that nobody knows. Okay, and after it's only fruit trees. All right. Now, I never grown any fruit trees before I came to Honolulu. In fact, I haven't grown anything.
Well, you were living in a lot of places with a lot of concrete. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but
well, I think you have a green thumb now.
Well,
your
I'm
trees are
not
doing
choosing
well.
a green thumb. I think it's the soil. I was told that the soils are black. This is the volcanic soil, and very good drainage, and very good for fruits. And I haven't used any what you call
fertilizer.
Fertilizer. I haven't used any. Right now, I planted many. Okay, some with great success. Some I'm still waiting. All right. Now, for example, I have planted at least 6 avocado trees, and 4 of them bear fruit just about every year. The 2 of them are kind of stubborn, they wait 3-4 years. Okay, so I get to eat 1-2 avocado a day. These are big ones. They're about 2 or 3 times the size of those that you get in Whole Foods. Okay. Now, so on top of that, I have 2 Maya lemon trees. They are everywhere. In fact, I started picking, almost all of them are gone now, almost, but you can see the flowers coming out already. So they are
awesome.
very
yeah, he had a pineapple that was actually a really big pineapple. that he had picked when we were there. Kumquats, limes, tangelo, mango, starfruit. He pretty much has like an herb garden set up. But what I think even banana, I didn't see them growing, but I thought I saw banana trees, papayas, I think tomatoes. I mean, he kind of had a little bit of everything, and it was all kind of growing on their own. No,
I have no success growing tomatoes here.
Oh, really? Is it
yeah.
too? Do you
I
need
don't know.
more?
They said maybe it's too humid here. I never had any luck. But the citric trees, citric and mango, particularly avocado, I have no problem. Yeah.
And he travels a lot, goes back and forth from San Francisco and other places. So there's times where you maybe aren't home as often. So he did mention, and we didn't get to see it because I guess long time ago he had set up an aquaponics setup, but because he was traveling so much, it did require a little bit more attention to the fish. So I think he had to stop that project, but it was doing well when he was there. And it was a neat system to see. He did have a picture of it. So that kind of encompasses the food aspect of what he's been doing. And the neat thing about this home that he's built is he's not a person who is, I would say, trying to build a green home. He was just building and creating this home for him and his wife. And it wasn't until I got there and I was just like, these are all features that a lot of people are looking at right now. And these are all things that people are trying to emulate or would like to see in their homes. It's becoming a trend, that people are looking for. Another thing too about Tantalus and Makiki Heights is that even though it's so close to town, it's up in the kind of like this forest area. They actually don't have the sewer and like public sewers, right? So there's a lot of cesspools up there, and now people are turning them into septic tanks or septic systems. And so that's what he had done originally when he was building his home. So he does have a septic system that services both homes. Do you know about how much you probably spend on servicing your septic system?
Well, okay, you mean constructing a new one or surfacing?
Oh, no, not constructing it, because I mean,
Surfacing?
yeah, just servicing. every
to be
year.
fair, even it serves two homes, all the time, there's no more than two persons who live in each of the houses. Okay, even when they're renting the small building out, there's only a couple, and also these people travel a lot too. So it's not like
It's not a
intensively
typical
used.
2 5-bedroom kind of homes where you've
Yeah,
got full families.
right,
Understand?
right. So the one time that we clean it, suck it, is the first 10 years, okay? And it only costs $350. Okay? So
So
in fact,
keep
it's
in
been 7
mind that
years
if you
now.
have this system and you have larger families using the kind of
Yeah.
like the septic, then you would definitely have to have more maintenance. But this sewer bill that you normally get, which most people do get every month or every other month,
One month
you
is
wouldn't have.
$350. Yeah, 1
You
month is
wouldn't
more
have
than
it.
50.
In addition, they do have public water though. So you do have access to public water. If you wanted to go off grid, I think this home would be very doable. You could actually go off grid and do water catchment because this area does get a lot of rainfall. So it is probably possible to set up a water catchment system and even have filtration with your water resources. And being in town this close, you could technically, I mean, they do have gas as well.
We don't have gas
And
there.
oh, you don't have gas?
No,
Or you just use electricity?
no,
Just like,
only electricity and water that we get from the public.
but do you have propane? You have propane.
Yeah, we use propane, but not
Yeah, so they
natural.
have I mean, I don't mean they don't have natural gas. They have
Yeah,
propane.
not exactly.
So they have, so technically speaking, if you were to do water catchment, this home could actually be an off-grid system because they have the solar, they have the septic, you would have water catchment, and then you could actually, live off of the food you grow. I don't know, maybe have some chickens. So it's a very interesting property. And I know that we're running short on time. So I did want to kind of wrap things up because we're going a little bit further than most times. But I did want to say, like, thank you so much for showcasing your house here. In addition to being able to check it out online, he does have a website for this specific property, so you can actually check out some photos. And that address is www.2184roundtopdrive.com. And it actually talks all about the home there with some photos. And it's also been in some publications as well, where you can kind of check out those articles. And then if you have any questions, do you have an email that you would like to share if anybody wanted to reach out to you personally?
Yes, it's very simple. My last name is Tai, T-A-I, architecture, one word, Tai architecture @gmail.
Gmail.com.
Yeah.
So how much is the home for sale today?
It's 3.5.
It's listed at
million.
3.5. It's in the MLS system here
Yeah.
on Oahu. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to call me. I will relay anything to him as well. But other than that, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, but I want to
Vincent.
say the reason we're selling is because we're moving back to San Francisco Bay Area.
Yes,
Good.
he is.
Good.
And so him and his wife are currently living in the property, and they do go back and forth. So viewing it would be easy when he's here, and he's currently in town. So hopefully we'll help you get this property sold, and you could be on your way back home with all your friends in and family in San Francisco.
Yes, very nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Vincent. And also, thank you for listening. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, which is at www.smartlivinghi.org. You can also follow us on Instagram, which is at smart_living_Hawaii. And you can like us on Facebook. Other than that, until next time, live smart. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.